Welcome in. Fox Sports Radio studios brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com for a free rate quote. And remember, heat is the main cause of battery failure, so it's important to have a tough battery. Duralast batteries designed and tested to start at extreme temperatures up to 167 degrees. They're proven tough and sold only at AutoZone. Get in the zone. AutoZone. We're in the zone here on Outkick the coverage, and the ended on just recently, obviously, Monday night. We talked a lot on Tuesday about how good the Warriors were, trying to contextualize where they ranked all time, what the future should be for LeBron. Was the decision right for Kevin Durant to leave and go to Golden State? Lots of different angles to hit as a part of Tuesday's show, reacting to Game 5 coming to a close and ending the NBA season. But one topic that we've honestly not spent that much time on, because we haven't had that much data, is, are super teams good for the NBA? Now, LeBron James may disagree and say he's never been a member of a super team, but I think just about everybody who watched him go to Miami saw what happened with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, and then later what happened with Ray Allen. There's probably 4 Hall of Famers on that Miami Heat team. Certainly 3, because Ray Allen, Dwayne Wade, and LeBron James are all definite Hall of Famers. The only thing that would keep Chris Bosh, I would think, out of the Basketball Hall of Fame in whenever his career ends is his health situation. So there's a good chance that we got 3, definitely 3, maybe 4 Hall of Famers there. We don't know exactly what's going to happen going forward with Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, but it seems like there's a decent chance that right now the Golden State Warriors have 4 Hall of Fame players, and Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, who I think it's fair to say will be first ballot Hall of Fame guys. Then looking good for Draymond Green and Klay Thompson, I would say, to make the Hall of Fame. You look at right now the Cleveland Cavaliers, LeBron James, obviously clear first ballot Hall of Famer. There's a good chance that Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving also end up in the Hall of Fame. So LeBron James has been on teams with either 3 or 4 Hall of Fame players. The ratings are out for the NBA Finals, and they have been very good, even though the series only went 5 games. But are teams that are super teams good for the NBA overall? That's a question we didn't really know the answer to. Well, my guy, we've had him on the show a couple of times. I think he's one of the smartest guys at Fox Sports. My guy Mike Mulvihill went into the numbers overall and actually gave you some data that I thought was fascinating. He looked for the last 5 years at total minutes of NBA viewing. How much time are fans spending watching NBA games on the national networks, on the regional sports networks, on the playoffs, and in the NBA Finals? This is basically every game that airs featuring an NBA team from when the season starts in October all the way up until when the season finished on Game 5 in the NBA Finals. And this was interesting. What he found was that the NBA actually set a 5-year low in total viewing this past season. Again, looking across the board at all games that were played in the NBA, that's all 32. That's all 30 teams. Every game they played, and I'm trying to specify this because people get distracted by bright, glittery objects, and I'll explain. Every game that was played, this was the lowest watched NBA season in 5 years. And it was actually down pretty substantially over last year. And again, it was down really substantially compared to 2012, 2013. And you can go look at my Twitter feed if you want to see these exact numbers. But in essence, the highest rated NBA has been, in terms of the number of people that watched, was 2012 and 13, when 128.1 billion minutes were watched by fans. This past year, 112 billion minutes were watched. So in the last 5 years, the NBA, according to this data, has declined by, and I'm always bad at math live on the air, but around 15%. That is, people are watching 15% less of the NBA in the last 5 years than they were 5 years ago. Now, why is that? is it entirely super team related? This is really pretty intriguing. And then he also went ahead and said, look, here's the overall trend lines if you look at individual ratings. And I think this is pretty interesting as well. He said NBA regular season on all the regional sports networks. That's everywhere you would watch your local team play. That's what a regional sports network is. So wherever you live in the country, if you flip on your local team, your local Fox Sports, whatever affiliate, your local, your local, whatever it is, all right, all these regional sports networks, they're actually at a 5-year low. Total NBA viewing on national networks, that's ESPN and TNT, that's the national games that air, at a 5-year low. The finals was at a 19-year high through Game 5. Now, not as many people watched the finals in a substantial number as last year because it went to 7 games last year, but the number of people who watched a 5-game series was up substantially, all right? So this is kind of fascinating, and it ties in with what I would say probably makes sense to you if you like basketball. What it means is if you are a fan in general of basketball, you'll come in and you'll watch super teams play, whether it's the Golden State Warriors or the Cleveland Cavaliers, when the final happens. That is, super teams and dynasties are good for casual fans when it actually gets to the NBA Finals themselves. People are intrigued. People will watch that game. They'll come in and they'll pay attention to what's going on. But what they won't do is they won't pay attention to their local team at the other 28 different team levels because there isn't any interest in that because you realize that your team has no chance of winning a championship. And that in and of itself is pretty intriguing, right? Because what it means is that there's great interest at the top level when the season gets to the finals. Oh, man, I can't wait to pay attention to what's going to happen in the NBA Finals between LeBron James, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and this dynasty that the Golden State Warriors are putting together. But the overall regular season and the playoffs up to the finals don't matter at all. And that's not good for the NBA. That means that the strength of the NBA top to bottom is actually flawed. So it got me thinking. Let's pretend that you were brought in as a consultant, and the goal was to make the NBA great again. What could you do to make the NBA stronger so that it wouldn't have its weakest viewing year in 5 years? Again, a lot of debate about whether or not the Warriors and the Cavs are good for the NBA. The answer, according to the data, is no, they are not. They're good for the NBA Finals when they actually play, but the vast majority of people out there are tuning out of the NBA beforehand. And this is reflective, I think, in a larger sense of the issues the NBA is going to have going forward, because my guys at OddsShark, and we're going to talk to John Campbell at oddshark.com at the bottom of this hour, get you some gambling tips for the U.S. Open, talk about futures for the NBA, the NHL. But the future numbers are already out. And if you're not familiar, futures are what are the odds that somebody's going to win a championship. The Warriors, this is an amazing stat. The Warriors right now for the 2017-2018 season are a bigger favorite at minus 225, some places up to minus 300. The Warriors are a bigger preseason favorite than any team has ever been in the history of the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NHL, or the NBA before. Think about how wild that is. In the history of gambling on those 4 major sports, that's the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, and the NHL. All 4 major sports. There's never been a point in time where there was a bigger favorite than the Golden State Warriors are coming into next season to win the NBA championship. That means, once more, that the ratings are likely to plummet for the other 28 teams because people are going to say, you know what, my team has no chance to win a championship. Why do I care? I'm just going to wait around until it gets to be June and the Golden State Warriors are in the final again. So I was sitting around when I saw this data yesterday afternoon, last night. I'm sitting around trying to think, what could the NBA do to make the league great again? What additions could they have? I'm going to bring in the crew next segment. I'll ask them. But I've got 3 different distinct moves that I think would make the NBA great. I also want you to then react to those. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the phone number, 877-996-6369. What are those 3 things that I would do to make the NBA great again? Number 1, why in the world do we have to sit from this point in time, and I'm not just saying this as a radio guy who comes on and talks to you for 3 hours every morning. Number 1, why do we have to sit for 2 months, over 2 months, with no real major sports action in basketball or football to watch between now and when football actually kicks off in late August, early September? Why doesn't the NBA start its season on Christmas Day? Instead of starting in October and running all the way until June, why doesn't the NBA kick off its season on Christmas Day and run the NBA season through mid-August? Fascinating question. I think that would help the NBA a lot because there's so many days to fill in June, July, and August where there's not a lot of events going on. I think it's not. It used to be, we don't want to do it during summer because people go on their vacations. I think that's not that big of a deal anymore. A lot of people go on vacation. They watch the NBA just as easily. It doesn't matter where you are. You can watch the NBA. It's not like it was back in the day where people just panic. I mean, everybody's got their phones, their iPads. You can watch the NBA anywhere. So I don't think the vacation schedule really impacts in any way substantively how many people would be interested in watching the NBA during the summer. So I would start the NBA December 25th. What 2 additional ideas do I have? I'll tell you next. That's called a tease, boys and girls. This is Fox Sports Radio, and I'm going to make the NBA great again. We come back right after this break. Live from the Geico Fox Sports Radio studios. Great news. Quick way you could save money. Switch to Geico. Go to geico.com, and in 15 minutes, you could save 15% or more on car insurance. Trying to make the NBA great again. Lots of talk about whether super teams are good for the league. Ratings were up for the NBA Finals, but overall ratings collapsed in the NBA this year at a 5-year low, according to my guy Mike Mulvihill. You can go check me out on Twitter if you want to see me tweeting out the actual data. And the reason I think is pretty basic. It's because the big super teams like Golden State Warriors and Cleveland Cavaliers are great for the casual fan who comes in to watch the NBA Finals and says, man, I didn't watch much of the NBA during the regular season, but now I'll see who's going to watch the championship, who's going to win the championship. But they didn't watch during the regular season. Ratings were down substantially at all the regional sports networks, at all the national games that were carried on ESPN and TNT, and in the early rounds of the playoffs. And that's because there's no suspense. If you're a fan of the Cavs or the Warriors, that's great. Your team might have a chance to win a championship. If you're one of the other 28 teams in the league, you have no chance at winning a championship. And that's not good for the NBA's overall brand. And so I'm trying to come up with ways to make the NBA great again. I've got 3. Number 1, I would start the NBA on Christmas Day. And I would run the league all the way up until August. I would take advantage of the fact that there's now relatively no sports going on in June, July, and August until late August when we get real football games going in college and the NFL again. So that would be my number 1 suggestion about how to make the make the NBA great again. Number 2, you've heard me talk a little bit about this. The big issue that we've got right now in the NBA is there is zero parity. You have a couple of really good super teams, and then nobody else out there has a chance to win a championship. And that's not good for the league. And it also means that even the playoffs, when a lot of people used to come in and start paying attention to the NBA, it's not happening now because you know that there's not going to be any upsets in the first couple of rounds of the playoffs. And so, as a result, your casual fan's not watching because there's a lot of entertainment options out there, because there's lots of other things to distract you, whether it's Netflix or Hulu or Amazon or the NHL or just watching old movies. You know, whatever it is, the number of entertainment options out there have never been higher. And so, as a result, the NBA ratings have plummeted over the last 5 years in terms of everything but the NBA Finals. So my second choice would be this, and you guys have heard me talk about this a little bit, but I think the NBA is fundamentally broken because the way that they've created the salary cap doesn't incentivize the best players to end up on different teams. That is, right now the Warriors have around 4 of the top 20 players in all of the NBA on their roster. And the Cavs have, again, this is depending on how exactly you rank them, and the Cavs have around 3. And that means that in general, 7 of about the top 25 players in the entire league are on the Cavs and the Warriors. So what would happen if you did what I suggest, which is borrow a little bit from what MLS does in soccer? They have a salary cap, but they also have exceptions or exemptions for the best players that don't fit under the team's salary caps. So what if you had 30 individual players, that's 1 per NBA team, that is every NBA team from the best to the worst gets the opportunity to sign 1 player to a non-salary capped contract. In other words, you can pay that 1 player whatever the market will bear. If Steve Ballmer wants to pay LeBron James $100 million to play for the LA Clippers, he can do it. And the same thing would be true of Kevin Durant on down, Steph Curry. Every player who's considered a top 30 player by individual teams could be signed for whatever their value was outside of the NBA's salary cap. So LeBron James would be worth maybe $100 million a year. Maybe Kevin Durant would be worth 80 or 85 or 90 million, depending on who's signing. As a result, Kevin Durant wouldn't be trying to go join a super team. He made that decision because the salary cap structure in the NBA means that he's not making that much different in terms of money at Golden State than he would have made at Oklahoma City. And so as a result, there's no way Kevin Durant goes to Oklahoma City if, say, the Washington Wizards could have come out and said, hey, KD, you want to come home? We got $85 million for you next year. And then it goes all the way down. In theory, that would mean that the 30 best NBA players are evenly distributed on the 30 best NBA teams. Now, you would still have the draft and everything else, but instead of having 4 of the top 20 players on Golden State or 3 of the top 25 on the Cleveland Cavaliers, all 30 of the top players would be evenly distributed across the league. That would create parity. It would be a little bit more like the NFL, where on any given Sunday anything can happen. People in all those other markets would be more likely, I believe, to pay attention to their team if they thought, you know what, maybe if we make the playoffs, we can actually make a run. You know, the number 8 seed in the NBA playoffs never gives the number 1 seed a run. Number 4 never gives the number 1 a run, usually either. Compare that to, say, the NHL or the NFL or the NCAA tournament or Major League Baseball or the college football playoff. You always have the possibility of the lowest seeded team in those playoffs winning the actual playoffs. Nashville Predators just took this thing on a wild ride and almost won the Stanley Cup as the worst team in the playoffs, according to the regular season. That made that a lot more of an entertaining playoff than it would be in the NBA, where you know that the 8 seed has no chance, where you have the Golden State Warriors going 16-1 in the playoffs and the Cleveland Cavaliers going 12-1 before they got to the NBA Finals. There was no challenge in either of the conferences for these two teams because they had all the best players. And number 3, what I would do is I would eliminate regular season resting unless players are on the injured list. Unless you're on basically the disabled list, the injury list, you have to play. And that would go a long way towards making sure that you don't end up with major games with players just deciding to sit. I would say that if you're going to sit, you can only sit for home games, which would, I think, help a little bit with the situation. So those are 3 things that I would do to make the NBA great again. Again, the data that we have here that's different than what everybody else is focused on is the NBA final ratings are great, and you're going to get distracted by the bright, glittery object and believe, oh, the NBA's in great shape. Look, a lot of people watch the finals. Well, you have to roll the finals into the overall total viewing, and if you do that, NBA viewing is at a 5-year low. In the last 5 years, never has the NBA had fewer people watching its product than it did this year. Let's bring in the crew. Let's talk to them. Guys, what do you think? Jason Barton, I'll start with you about this situation. What do you think about my recipe to potentially make the NBA great again?
I don't know if you could get the last one done, honestly, because you'd still have the same thing that used to be done where guys would have phantom injuries.
Yeah, I think what you would have to do if you're going to have an injury list is say you can't have a phantom injury for one game. Like if you're going to miss a game, you have to be out for either a week or 2 weeks. And then I think it would change, because if you have to go on the disabled list to miss a game, then you're not going to be able to just pull a guy out for one game. If you have to sit out for a full week, or if you have to sit out for 2 weeks, if you go on the injury list, then I think the number of guys who would have injuries would miraculously disappear.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting take on it. You'd have to wait until the end of the current CBA, right? So that's not something that could be done right now.
Or you would have to sit down and say, look, we're potentially going to give these star players a lot more money. Like if I'm Adam Silver, I am sitting down and I'm saying we got to fix this thing. Because this year I'm looking at the overall data and the health of the NBA. A lot of people, again, are getting distracted by the bright, glittery object of the NBA Finals. They're not paying attention to the underlying core. It's like saying, oh, we had a great dinner, but every breakfast and lunch, like, you don't get to eat at all. Like, oh, the dinner was incredible. Did you not see we got, like, silver plates here? We've got an unbelievable – yeah, but I don't have enough money to eat, breakfast and lunch. Like, don't get distracted by the bright and glittery object. Look at the underlying data. The underlying data say the NBA's got a significant problem related to these super teams.
Yeah, and just looking, because, we've talked before about the guys, the top guys potentially having just wide open whatever they could get. And one problem is, like, if you change to a hard salary cap, the NBA would love that, but the union is going to fight against that until the end of time. It would actually, I saw David Aldridge actually write that if the NBA tried to insist on a hard cap, there'd be a season-long lockout almost immediately from that. And then taking away the max contract idea to where LeBron or Kevin Durant, for example, could get whatever they wanted, it would strangle the rank and file, and that would also upset the union. So there's all sorts of issues to try and make that happen. Now, at the same time, it's a real problem for me as somebody that absolutely loves the NBA to already be able to say that the only thing that's going to matter next year is whether or not Cleveland's able to put together something. I don't know what that is, whether it's moving Kyrie and trying to get Avery Bradley and Crowder out of Boston and maybe a draft pick or whatever it is, to try and make some kind of case that they can go after Golden State. Like the draft hasn't even happened yet. And we already know what's going to happen in the NBA Finals, because the only question in the NBA next year is, can Cleveland get good enough to challenge the Warriors? Maybe you can ask that a couple of other teams, but really it's about Cleveland and Golden State again. Or is somebody going to get injured? Right, exactly. Like for Golden State, I mean, you have to sit around and be like, okay, well, maybe they'll have a couple of key injuries. To me, that's an amazing stat. And we're about to talk to John Campbell from Oddshark, but I want to hit this with you, and then I'm going to hit this with him as well. Again, you can load up the phones because we're going to have a quick hit with John Campbell, and then I'll go to your suggestions on what you would do to make the NBA great again. 877-996-6369. Call in, talk to Jason, and he'll line you up to talk with us in the final segment of the show. But this is amazing stat that I haven't heard anywhere else. There has never been as big of a favorite to win a title in the preseason as Golden State is right now in the history of the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, or the NFL. That ain't healthy, boys and girls. Let's find out what's trending. Then I'm going to talk to that in the context with John Campbell of Oddshark. Also get you some U.S. Open gambling picks. That's coming up next. Here, let's first find out what's trending now. Welcome back. Fox Sports Radio Studios brought to you by Geico. Easy to save 15% or more on car insurance with Geico. Go to geico.com or call 800-947-AUTO. The only hard part, figuring out which way is easier. As well, TrueCar. With TrueCar, you can find out what other people in your area paid for the same car you're looking for, and on average, save over $3,000 off MSRP. Whether you're looking for a new or used car, visit TrueCar to enjoy a more confident car buying experience. This is a confident show, especially when we bring in John Campbell at Johnny Oddshark. He joins us every single Wednesday to help break down the larger gambling arena picture. John Campbell, we're just talking about a fascinating data point that my guy Mike Mulvihill at Fox Sports put out, and it showed that the NBA was at a 5-year low in terms of overall viewership when you factor in regional sports networks, all of the national televised games, as well as the early rounds of the playoffs in conjunction with the NBA Finals. A lot of people came in and watched and gambled, I'm sure, on the NBA Finals, but they didn't necessarily watch during the regular season and early rounds of the playoffs. And so I'm going to bring in you and bring you in with this question.
How prohibitive of a favorite are the Warriors, and have you ever seen anything like this in your time covering sports leagues in America in terms of their preseason favorite?
Yeah, they're minus 150 is about the best you can get them right now to win the NBA championship.
And as bad, by the way, minus 150 the best. The worst right now, I saw the Golden Nugget in Vegas has them at minus 300.
Yeah, I mean, there you go. You're risking $300 just to win $100 on the NBA champion. And to answer your question, no, I've never seen anything like it. I've been doing this for 15 years, and I can't remember in a team sport anybody being minus money before the season starts. It's absolutely ridiculous.
The Warriors are a bigger favorite than any team in the history of the NHL, the Major League Baseball, the NBA, or the NFL in the preseason. And that obviously is the quintessential definition of a super team. When you see gambling perspectives, when the Warriors are this big of a favorite, is it hard to set lines because the general public just comes in and says, well, the Warriors are so good, we're going to be all over them? Like, do you see that happen, or are there counterintuitive plays where people are saying, well, the Warriors are so much of a favorite, there has to be value betting against them?
It's not that tough to set lines, but especially with the spreads coming in, I mean they'll get action both sides that way if they set the spreads right. But what a lot of people don't realize is that books actually sort of love this because it leaves them with a really limited liability for the NBA championship. Their dream finals this year was Golden State and Cleveland because where the odds are the worst, they're left with the least liability and they're going to lose the least amount of money. So the books kind of love it, but across the board, this is hurting the NBA. I think bettors bet game to game, but when you know who the champion's going to be, some of the fun is just really taken out of it.
We're talking to John Campbell. You can follow him on Twitter at Johnny Oddshark. Sorry, John. Let's talk about the U.S. Open a little bit. The U.S. Open tees off tomorrow. You can watch a lot of it on FS1 and on Fox. They're up at Erin Hills in Wisconsin. Dustin Johnson is the defending champ. He's the favorite, I believe. What kind of movement are you seeing in terms of betting the U.S. Open, and how would you suggest people out there maybe play it?
Well, it's been pretty steady, actually, yeah, and Dustin Johnson is the favorite at around 7-1, and then you've got Spieth 12-1. Rory McIlroy's been probably one of the favorite plays, and he went from around 14-1, and you can find him lower than double digits out there now. So he's been a really popular play. I think this year distance is going to be a little bit more of a factor. It's not usually a huge factor in the U.S. Open, but despite all the rough and the talk of all that, these fairways are really wide, and I think that's going to give an advantage. It's usually a big name and somebody ranked in the top 30 that wins the U.S. Open, so that's where you want to focus. And I like Spieth 12-1, 14-1. I think it might be Ricky Fowler's time. He's 22-1, and a couple others as you get lower. Kuchar at 60-1 is one that I kind of like. He's a great scrambler, great putter, and has distance. So those are a few I like. Louis Oosthuizen 50-1. He's in form, distance, and scrambling as well. So those are a few that I like.
The way to play this, and a lot of people maybe haven't played gambling on the U.S. Open, the major golf tournaments, if you want to be entertained as we come into Father's Day weekend, is to bet a bunch of guys, right? Because the odds, even like you said, Dustin Johnson is 7-1, so you get a big payoff if you hit one of these guys. And you mentioned a couple of guys, 50-1, 60-1. Kind of get 4 or 5 guys to play on your card instead of trying to put all your money behind one golfer and then hope that you're going to have a situation where one of your guys is in the mix as opposed to just trying to pick one, right? Because the odds are just stacked against you picking an individual golfer if you're only picking one guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I typically take 5 or 6 to start, and then you just hope that they're in the hunt. And today, where the futures odds not only change day to day. They change in game. And I remember taking Zach Johnson a couple years ago to save my British Open at 50-1 when he was leading. He was 50-1. Just nobody believed he was going to win. So you can do a lot of things. It's really about hedging and watching where the lines move. And you got a guy 50-1. I mean, that leaves you with a lot of options. He doesn't have to win, but that leaves you with a lot of things you can do as it rolls down to the finish.
All right, Major League Baseball is going on right now. The Cubs obviously trying to repeat. People are now, I think in general, starting to turn their attention a little bit to baseball because, frankly, there's not a lot else going on. Is the odds market moving very much in terms of who's favored to be in the World Series? Have you seen very much change in those marketplaces?
Yeah, quite a bit actually. The Astros are now the favorite. They're at around 4-1, and the Cubs are at a little worse than 5-1, which is a big change. They were higher than 3-1 earlier to start the season, and everybody just loves taking them. So I'm not sure I would have predicted the Astros being the favorite this early on in the season. So we have seen some movement there. The Red Sox, a lot of interest there. They're around between 7-1 and 8-1.
Outstanding stuff as always. Anything else out there in the odds market that's moving that we should be aware of as we come into the summer months here?
Not really. NBA draft coming up. Markelle Fultz is at minus 2,000. We saw.
Hold on. That's a great one. So Markelle Fultz is at minus 2,000. So basically, this is a foregone conclusion. The Celtics are taking him.
Yeah, and when these odds first came out, he was around minus 475, something like that. So these odds have moved quite a bit. And Lonzo Ball right behind at 9-1.
9-1 for Lonzo Ball. Outstanding stuff as always, John Campbell. Go follow John Campbell at Johnny Oddshark on Twitter. Appreciate it, my man.
Thanks a lot, Clay.
Cool site there where he works, Oddshark. You can go find out gambling, informational related needs. If you are interested in putting some money down, that's a good informational site to check out. I am Clay Travis. You are listening to Outkick the Coverage. This, my friends, is Fox Sports Radio. Up next, it's your calls, 877-996-6369. Warriors have never been a bigger favorite in the history of organized team sports in the preseason. How do we make the NBA great again? I'll tell you, and you can react next on Fox Sports Radio. It's time for the Geico Play of the Day. Dodgers got the win over the defending American League champion Cleveland Indians last night on the road. And Yasiel Puig, he made some news telling everybody he was number one. But Cody Bellinger, he just raked the ball all over the place.
Drilled to right field and deep, and it looks like Bellinger has left the yard again. A 3-run shot this time. It is 7-2.
That call courtesy of our L.A. flagship AM 570. That's the Dodgers radio network. 7-5 win for the Dodgers. For Bellinger, bona fide Rookie of the Year candidate. Cody is the first player in history with 4 multi-home run games in his first 50 big league starts. He only needed 45 games to do it, including last night. That's a hell of a stat. And that's your Geico Play of the Day. What does it mean when Geico says just 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance? It means you probably should have gone to geico.com 15 minutes ago. Talking about how to make the NBA great again. A lot of discussion about this. Are super teams good for the NBA? Well, my guy Mike Mulvihill at Fox Sports looked at the data overall. He looked at regional sports viewing. He looked at national NBA games. He looked at the early rounds of the playoffs, and he combined it all with the NBA Finals, and he found that NBA viewing this past year hit a 5-year low. And as a result, even though the NBA Finals were popular, they weren't popular enough to come anywhere near bringing back the NBA ratings to a healthy place. And so I'm trying to figure out how to make the NBA great again. I got 3 ideas for you. One, start the season at Christmas. As a result, there's almost zero competition. I know baseball's out there, but June, July, and August, kind of a dead zone, obviously, for football and basketball. Play the NBA season until August. Eliminate a high-end cap. Let every team have one player who they don't have to fit within the cap. They can play them whatever the market rate is. That way, in theory, all 30 NBA teams would end up with one of the 30 best players. And finally, no resting in the regular season without an injury. If you miss one game, you have to be out for at least a week or 2 weeks. That, I think, would mean that people would pay more attention. Let's bring in your callers, 877-996-6369. Curious what your reactions are. How would you make the NBA great again? Jordan in New York. What's up, Jordan?
Hi, Clay. How's it going?
Always good, my man.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm good.
Oh, sorry about that. My Bluetooth's acted up here. Well, no, my idea is put it back on free TV. I mean, I'm a cord cutter. We're in a generation of cord cutters. And
when did you cord cut?
It's been a few years now. So the only time I get it, is a couple games a year on ABC. Baseball being my favorite sport, I only get the World Series. And,
that's kind of fascinating. So what do you do otherwise? You just don't watch sports? You go to sports bars? Like, if there's a game that you care about, what do you do?
Yeah, I'll hit the bar, or I keep up on it on Twitter or Facebook.
Now, did you just do that to save money? Like, you're thinking I'll save $1,200 or $1,400 a year on cable cost? Is that why you did it?
Pretty much, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. No, I mean, I appreciate the call.
I think that's the best way to do it. Look at the NFL. Their ratings are through the roof. They're the only ones that are up, and they're on Fox, CBS, NBC. Yeah,
no, it's a good point. I mean, look, I think if cord cutting continues to accelerate, and if you're not familiar with the term cord cutting, it means a lot of people out there struggle, You got a lot of obligations. You got a lot of responsibilities. You look at that cable bill, and you say, man, what would I like to do with this extra $1,200 or $1,400 at the end of the year if I didn't have to pay for cable or satellite? And a lot of people make that decision. That's one of the first things to go, I think, when you kind of sit down around the kitchen table there and figure out your finances. And I think that sports on the big broadcast networks, Fox, ABC, CBS, NBC, are going to continue to increase in the years ahead because that's where you can guarantee yourself the biggest audience. I think cord cutting is starting to impact things there. Tommy in Florida. What's up, Tommy?
Man, great show. This is so easy. It's not even funny. Let capitalism go to work. You guys are upset about parity. What sport has the most parity? Baseball does. Baseball. Here's what I would do. Baseball. You can sign players right out of high school. You don't have to worry about the college. You have no salary cap. You can pay the players as much as you want. So again, capitalism going to work. You could set up the league the way. Are you familiar with the way the soccer league is run over in England, the English Premier League? They have relegation.
Yeah.
What's one of the biggest problems with the NBA? Tanking at the end of the season. Well, those teams don't tank because if they tank, they go down to the lower level. So you could set up a D League or something like that and have relegation. So if you got rid of it, you could contract teams. You have way too many teams. I mean, let's be honest. There's way so the talent is spread out among way too many teams. And I would do this in every sport. I'd get rid of the draft. A player should be able to go wherever that player wants to go and wherever that team wants to sign that player. So if you did those types of things, less teams, this idea of these 2 or 3 teams, every guy wanting to play on those teams, you'd get rid of all that. You'd actually have parity. There is no parity in the NBA. Right?
Yeah, it's a great call. It's a great point. Why is the NFL so successful? Because of the idea, fair or foul, that on any given Sunday anything can happen. Doesn't happen in the NBA. I love the idea. I'm a markets guy. I believe in capitalism. I think that if LeBron James is worth $100 million, he should be able to make $100 million. They shouldn't have to fit him into a supermax. I think that makes total sense. I'm going to open up the phone lines, take your calls more as we continue at the open of hour 2, 877-996-6369. Callers in Michigan, Texas, and more. Wait for us. Let's see, Aaron and George, I'll go to you guys first, but everybody else will load up the lines, 877-996-6369. Start off there. We're trying to make the NBA great again. Our guy Jeff Schwartz is going to be with us in hour 2. He joins us every single Wednesday, and we will continue. Got the Animal Thunderdome coming, the Anonymous Mailbag. It's a loaded show here on Outkick the coverage as we come up on hours 2 and 3. I'll also bring back in the crew. What can we do to make the NBA great again? I've given you my ideas. You can react to it. NBA viewing hit a 5-year low. The season ended on Monday night. We talked about that on Tuesday. Now the Warriors are a bigger favorite than any team sport team has ever been in the history of American sports in the preseason. That ain't good for the NBA. We're trying to fix it. We're trying to make the NBA great again here on Fox Sports Radio. Welcome back. Fox Sports Radio studios brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com for a free rate quote. great data here that was provided by my guy Mike Mulvihill at Fox Sports, one of the smartest guys who works at all of Fox Sports. And he puts out information that's sometimes a little bit counterintuitive. And there has been a lot of discussion and words written and debate about whether or not super teams are good for the NBA. And if you go back and look historically, people can say, the Bulls were great for the NBA when they were a super team during the Bulls dynasty. The Lakers and Kobe and Shaq were a great dynasty during the time that they were super teams. Now that the NBA season is over, we're kind of looking at a retrospective of the season and saying, are they good or bad? Now, NBA final ratings were pretty good. In fact, Game 5, which just finished on Monday night, set, in terms of total viewers, a record for Game 5s that hadn't been equaled all the way back to 1998 with Michael Jordan in his final year. But the challenge is that wasn't reflected in any way by the overall ratings. And my guy Mulvihill actually went out and looked, and what I love about him is he provides the information that sometimes can be a little bit counterintuitive. And you can follow him on Twitter. You can go look at me on Twitter. I'm at Clay Travis. I retweeted Mike Mulvihill. He's at Mulvihill79, but you can see him. Follow him. If you're interested in sports viewing habits, he's got so much incredible data. A lot of times Major League Baseball, lots of times NFL, NBA, whatever it is, he's out there horse racing, trying to look at the numbers. And he said in the last 5 years, I'm going to look, this is Mike Mulvihill's data, I'm going to look at the regional sports networks, at the playoffs, at the national networks that includes, obviously, TNT and ESPN, and then at the NBA Finals, and look at the totality of viewing. Instead of just thinking about the NBA playoffs or just thinking about the NBA Finals and answering the question, are super teams good for the league based on what happens there, let's look at the totality of viewing. And when you look at the totality of viewing, regional sports networks, national games on ESPN and TNT, early rounds of the playoffs leading all the way through the NBA Finals, the NBA set a 5-year low for viewing in the season that was just completed on Monday night. That is, in the history of the NBA, the viewership is down to a 5-year low with what happened this season. And if you go back to 2012 and 2013, the numbers are actually down pretty precipitously, around 15%. So I came up with several ideas that I think would make the NBA great again. We're taking your calls on at 877-996-6369. First, I would start the NBA season at Christmas. I think this age of, people won't pay attention in the summer, I think it's gone. I think people can pay attention anywhere because they have their iPads, they have their iPhones. If you're on the road for vacation, it's just as easy to watch the NBA as it is on vacation. I was on vacation watching the NBA. Probably a lot of you were as well. Start at Christmas. I would then eliminate the salary cap as it exists now, and I would have one player on every team who can receive a market-based salary. In theory, that would mean the top 30 players in the NBA would be slotted at the top 30 teams, and then I would also not allow resting in the regular season. You say, well, how do you do that? You can only miss a regular season game if you're put on the disabled list, and that would mean that you're on the disabled list for a week or 2 weeks. So if you're going to take a week, you're going to take a game off, then you have to sit out a full week or potential of 2 weeks. Calls 877-996-6369. Let's go to Aaron in Michigan. What's up, Aaron?
Hey, Clay. Thanks for taking my call. Got 2 quick points for your show here. First one is I think you had too much negative coverage by the media throughout the regular season.
What do you mean by? Well, yeah, that's interesting. So you think the media's negative coverage of the NBA led to fewer people watching? Like, what do you mean negative coverage? What did you see as being negative?
Well, when I refer to negative coverage, I mean low-hanging fruit. When we talk about LeBron James not having enough players, way in the middle of the season saying, I'm not going to make it through the finals because I don't have enough players. When you talk about Kevin Durant, he's a traitor. He's going to Golden State. You got Draymond Green. What's he going to do? What kind of negative thing is he going to do to get himself kicked out?
Okay, let me push back a little bit here, Aaron. Those could be negative stories, but they're also just interest stories. And if negativity, if that were true, wouldn't fewer people have watched the finals? I don't think the NBA's problem is at the high end. Like, I don't think there's an issue with the Cavs and the Warriors, because I think people casually come in who are regular fans that may don't pay attention during the normal season. I think the NBA's issue is not with the super teams. I think it's with the 28 other teams that don't have a chance to win a title.
Well, okay, so let's talk about your super teams. Let's look at the negative way that that LeBron has made his super teams, because that's how it's viewed as negative, is the way he built a super team, not how it was constructed. You look at the teams of the 60s and the 70s, and there's a great 30 for 30 on ESPN right now about the Celtics and the Lakers and how those teams were actually, built and not just bought. Nobody likes to have a bought championship. So when they see a team that's being built through the system, Golden State is doing it a little bit more, but with the addition of Kevin Durant, well, now it looks, again, it's a little bit more negative. And so I think when people look at that, they're like, well, they're just buying another championship. Whereas they look at LeBron, he's buying another superstar. So they're not looking at it as like you would the 88, 89 Pistons when, it was brought up through the draft and so on and so forth. I think you gotta create a more positive attitude to get the casual person to be interested in the team.
All right, appreciate the call. I don't know that I buy that. I mean, the purpose of a pro sports franchise is literally to buy a championship, right? You buy a championship by having the best possible team. You pay a lot of money to your players, and in exchange, they try to win you a championship. That's literally the business. So I don't get they're trying to buy a championship. Well, that's the purpose of the team. Like, your goal is to, now you want to make money too, but if you're an owner, your goal is to spend money to win a championship. That's literally the very definition of buying a championship. So I'm not buying into that. You're not playing for the love of the game. George in Texas. What's up, George?
Hey, Clay. Great show, man. There's just so many ways to go with this. I'll give you a couple things about the numbers, and then I got three things the NBA could do. First of all, those numbers are subjective. You can turn them any way you want to make them look any way you want, through any mirrors or prism.
Hold on. Hold on. Let me stop you there. I don't buy into the idea that the numbers are subjective. The numbers that I just hit you with are every single NBA game that was played this year compared to the previous 4 years. The NBA had fewer viewers than at any point in the last 5 years. That's not subjective. Now, you can say all we care about is the NBA Finals, and if you just look at the NBA Finals, then you would say the NBA is a healthy league. But the NBA Finals, that 5 games, represents a pinprick of the overall NBA product. So if you're saying that, then I think that's really lazy analysis. So I don't think the numbers are accurate, right? They're not subjective in any way, but I'll bring you back in.
Okay, yeah. Well, here's how they're subjective, okay? First of all, they're under the cloud of the NBA. Is it a bad team, super teams and stuff like that? Is it bad for the league? Just because the NBA numbers are down isn't the reason why ESPN ABC is slashing so many jobs. Sports are down in general, and there's a reason why, and it's not something, I can't get into it. I'm a numbers guy too. I can't get into it, but I can tell you this. The numbers are kind of subjective, and with every journalist / sports talking head banging on sports and how bad. I mean, come on, dirty laundry sells. Whether it's in news, regular car crashes and airplane crashes and terrorist attacks, or sports, bad news sells. Let's admit that. Okay, so here's how I think the NBA can fix themselves. I think first of all they need to get rid of guaranteed salaries. Second of all, I think they need to bring hand checking back into the league. Let people play basketball. It's a man's league. And third of all, and the most important now, a previous caller brought up the fact that baseball can draft kids out of high school. Well, most of those guys have to spend 3 or 4, maybe 5 years in a minor league. So instead of letting these, making these kids go to college, we have the D League. Let people draft kids out of high school, but if they come straight out of high school, they got to play 3 years in the D League, and then the team that drafted them can either sign them to the big contract or let them go into free agency. I think those are things that the NBA might help. Great topics, Clay.
Yeah, appreciate it. Look, I mean, I think that if you're 18 years old, you should be able to make a living doing whatever you want. I'm not one of those guys who sits around and says, they need to go to college because what are they going to do if they don't get an education? First of all, a one and done is a joke. You show up on campus in September and you leave by March. Are you really telling me that these people are becoming geniuses who go to college for 1 year? Secondly, like we let guys walk around with machine guns in Afghanistan and get shot at 18 years old. I'm sorry. If you don't make it as a professional athlete, I think your life is not going to end, right? It's not the end of the world. You go back to college and you get an education or you don't. I'm a believer in let people succeed or fail. Don't try to coddle them. If we will let 18-year-olds graduate from high school and join the Marines or the Navy or the Army and be out there walking around with machine guns in middle of nowhere Afghanistan or freaking Iraq getting shot at, then I'm sorry. I don't feel that bad if a guy's jump shot isn't as good at 20 as we thought it was going to be when he was 18, and he doesn't end up having that long of an NBA career. And by the way, the number of guys who went straight to the league and ended up being pretty good, pretty high. LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett. Like, I can run through an entire list, Tracy McGrady, of guys who went straight from high school to the NBA and became luminescent superstars. And, in fact, if you go look at the data, and this is another good data set, drafting players directly from high school, they did better than letting guys go for 4 years to college and then drafting them. Do you know why? Because the players who were good enough to get drafted at 18 into the NBA were a lot more talented than the guys on average who stayed and played 3 or 4 years of college basketball. So the education didn't impact the success rate at all. Again, use baseball as an example. Baseball 18-year-olds get drafted all the time. If they wash out at the minors and it doesn't end up working out, do you know what happens? It's actually a great solution. They get in their draft contract the agreement that the team that drafts them is going to pay for their college so they can go back to school. If suddenly at 25 years old you realize, you know what, my arm's shot, I'm never going to be able to make the big leagues. This hasn't worked out for me. I've put in 6 or 7 years in the minor leagues in the process. I'm ready to call it a career. Then you go hop right back into college, and it's paid for. That's your choice. Eric in Utah. What's up, Eric?
Hey, I appreciate you taking my call. First of all, I have 3 things also. I totally agree with the if you're going to sit one game, I think you should at least sit, and it should be a hard number, like 6 games, 5 games, whatever it is. Also, there's as far as paying people an ungodly amount of number of, I don't think, but there should be a bonus for staying with your team. Like every year, every team gives, I don't know, a certain amount of money that they do, and every year that someone stays with a team, that team has the ability to pay them that extra.
Well, that already exists. That exists. I mean, they tried to put that in to encourage guys from not leaving. They put the Supermax in. If you're a really good player, then in theory, your team that drafts you can pay you more money than anybody else can to incentivize guys to stay as opposed to pulling a Durant and leaving.
Okay, so you know I'm from Utah. So anyway, so that's only if someone makes All-NBA.
Yeah, so you're nervous about your boy Gordon Hayward then.
Oh, easy. Well, of course. And then there also should be to keep the players that there's a certain type of player that is a super player now besides LeBron James, where if you had like some kind of really hard foul rule, like a hard rule on fouls where as soon as you touch 2 hands on a player, it's a foul. Boom. Done. I mean, there's too much like iffy stuff. Like even this last game you saw, LeBron was getting worked. You know what I mean? So I think that would actually make a lot of different types of players relevant rather than just like your shooters and your don't touch me players and that kind of thing.
Yeah, Eric faded away there, I believe. Let's go to Adam in Virginia, last call in, and then we're going to go to Jeff Schwartz.
Down to 2 categories. So you got the competitiveness across the league and then the entertainment value just on the screen. For the latter, I think you let them celebrate more. The NFL's kind of ahead of the curve here. They're trying to relax on the excessive celebration penalties. And then as far as competitiveness, like your idea of emulating the MLS and having one player, be, exempt from the cap. Instead of one player, I would see it as one spot. And that way, if 2 players wanted to kind of join together, they can split that max salary or 3 or whatever they can, or the.
Yeah, I appreciate the call. You're breaking up a little bit. My concern with that, it has to be one player. Because if you create the ability for multiple players to get in under the same exemption, then you just recreate the problem of the super teams. You got the Golden State Warriors with 4 of the top 20. You've got the Cavs with 3 of the top 25. Jason Martin has an interesting idea. We'll hit. I'll bring him in as part of the Jeff Schwartz conversation and let him hit his additional suggestion as well. But we're going to talk to Jeff Schwartz next. He joins us every single Wednesday. He is typically fantastic. We'll see whether or not he can keep that up. He's also, we'll see whether or not he is. He's now fully into the Lakers should draft Lonzo Ball cap, as he grew up in L.A., a huge Laker fan. That and more coming up next. I'm Clay Travis. You're listening to Fox Sports Radio. Live from the Geico Fox Sports Radio studios. Great news. Quick way you could save money. Switch to Geico. Go to geico.com, and in 15 minutes you could save 15% or more on car insurance. Tomorrow, U.S. Open tees off on Fox Sports and FS1. Guy who's going to be there up in Erin Hills in Wisconsin, Brant Snedeker, at Brant Snedeker on Twitter. Brant, what can you tell me about the course, and have you gotten over the fact that the NHL screwed the Preds out of a goal yet?
I have not. Sorry, that's my navigation system. I have not gotten over that yet. Still getting lots of consolation up here from all the guys on tour telling us how bad we got screwed on that call. So it's been a long couple of days for me. But the golf course is great. It's tough. It's gonna be a different kind of U.S. Open for people what are used to seeing. The fairways are really wide. The rough is pretty much non-existent except for they have this heather up here. There's kind of British Open style looking rough. It's brutal, but you got plenty of room until you hit in that. So with the weather forecast we have, which is going to be pretty wet, it looks like over the next 4 days, the golf course should play really, really wide. So might be a little bit different U.S. Open people are seeing. It might be a lot more fairways hit. Greens here are pretty big, so it might not be as difficult as it has been in years past, pending weather.
What score do you think wins it? And by the way, before I even get to what score wins it, do you not know how to get to the course? You have to have the navigation on in your car? That seems like a bad sign.
This course is in the middle of nowhere. This is not like you're hopping off the interstate and you're there. I think most guys are staying about 35 minutes away. Not to knock anybody that lives in Erin, Wisconsin, but it's not exactly a metropolis up here. So, yes, I have to have my navigation in my car to get me where I'm going. So I apologize for the serious response. While I'm trying to
have you ever had to have navigation to get to a U.S. Open course before?
I've had to leave my car to literally park my car on the side of a road because the traffic was so bad and take off to get to my tee time.
So wait, so what happens then? Do you have somebody show up in a golf cart and fast how? What do you? So
no, I started running down the road and I saw a cop and the cop hopped in the cop car, took me, and I kind of weaved through traffic and took me.
So do you have your clubs then? You're dressed already?
No, my clubs are at the golf course. But
all right, so your clubs are in the
golf gear trying to get there. Yeah, I made about 25 minutes before my tee time.
So, what if the cop hadn't believed that you were actually? I mean, that's a hell of a racket if somebody's just tired of the traffic.
I guess I would have turned into Usain Bolt and started running, see how long I could make it.
So what happened to your car?
I told transportation, they have transportation area events. I told them, hey, my car's parked a mile and a half back down the road on the on-ramp. If y'all want to go pick it up or just give me a ride. So I ended up getting a ride back there later. Car was still there and picked it up.
Oh, that's awesome. So Erin Hills obviously is kind of like you said, out in the middle of nowhere. I was reading an article about it in the Times. It didn't even exist as a course. It hadn't even been built until the early 2000s. And it looks a little bit like a links course-ish. What kind of score do you think wins on this one? You were pretty close when we talked to you before the Masters about what kind of shape the course was in. If I told you right now what's the score that wins this tournament, what do you think it is?
I'm going to say around 5 or 6 under par right now. Because the forecast is for it to be wet. When the golf course is wet, even though it'll be a very, very long and tough golf course in that aspect. Fairways are really wide for a U.S. Open, so when they're wide and the fairways are wet, it plays even wider. So the rough won't be as much of an issue. So, and the greens here are absolutely probably the best greens I've seen for U.S. Open as far as speed-wise and condition-wise. So the guys are going to make a lot of putts. I just don't see it playing. Now, this could change if we get a 15-mile-an-hour wind. Golf course will play completely differently, but it's not in the forecast right now. The highest wind total is 7 or 8 miles an hour for a day. So mean, I can see 5 or 6 under par winning this golf tournament.
We're talking to Brandt Snedeker. He's on his way to the U.S. Open. How many times will you have played these holes before the tournament actually starts on Thursday? So you got your navigation on 36 holes. So if for people who are going to be watching at home, what holes would you say, man, this is where the tournament could turn? This is a fascinating hole. Like, which one should we be paying attention to? Obviously, all of them could be.
First 3 holes on the back 9 are going to be pivotal. So 10, 11, 12, 3 really, really difficult holes. When we made the turn, tournament's probably won or lost there through the course of the week, just because there's 3 really tough driving, or 10's not so much, but 11 and 12 are really tough driving holes. Lots of numbers can be made on those holes. So I think those 3 holes will be the ones that kind of, 9's a little short par 3, so that little stretch 9, 10, 11, 12. It's a little short par 3, 145 yards, but you can make a 7 on it in the blink of an eye. So it'll be those 4 holes kind of dictate. You'll see guys get off to good starts, kind of hit those 4 holes, maybe give a few back, and then try to finish flurry in the last couple of holes. What
do you think I'd shoot on the U.S. Open? You've seen my swing. What kind of number would you assess that I would likely shoot? We're talking to Brandt Snedeker.
What do you shoot at West Haven?
Yeah, so I shoot West Haven's my local course. I mean, I'm happy if I get in the 90s. I mean, and that might be a little bit lenient.
A lot of 120 plus.
120 plus. Wouldn't you think it would be interesting? Like, I've pitched this to Fox before, to have a regular loser dude like me try to play the U.S. Open as a preview. Because the average golfer, I think golf is the thing that people do the most that they suck at, right? But when you watch good golfers like you play on the U.S. Open, you don't really have an appreciation. Like, I've argued for a while, it would be great to have an average speed guy participate in the Olympics so you could see how badly Usain Bolt would beat him, right? It's great to see people who are incredible at what they do, but you don't really get a contextual analysis of how good they are unless you see an average crappy dude like me. I think watching me play the course would be incredible theater.
They did it a couple years ago. They had Matt Lauer, Justin Timberlake.
But those guys are actually decent golfers, right?
Yeah, they were decent. They shot in the mid-90s, I think, at Torrey Pines. They took it easy on them. They let them play up a little bit. They didn't make them play all the way back. And they gave them easy pins and that kind of stuff. But I think it'd be. I still don't know if people have that much time to sit around and watch you play golf for 7 hours. I think at the end of the day, it would take you forever to play. So,
what did you? Speaking of making bad plays, I went to the Preds game 6. I imagine that you saw my outfit. I just got destroyed for my outfit. I had a Friday Night Lights.
I actually talked about it with my cat. My caddy's a regular reader of Outkick, and we started talking about it. And we were both howling hysterically at it.
Yeah. So, what was your perspective, you and the caddy, on my outfit? Was it deserving of the derision that it got online?
Pretty much, yes. Yeah, I think that everybody's pretty much spot on point. I mean, this is a Predators game 6. I was expecting at least. I mean, I actually would have given you an okay with wearing a jersey to the game because it's such a big game. They were going to find to wear it.
But that's a Friday Night Lights polo.
Would you have gotten less grief from wearing a jersey than you would from what you wore?
Oh, I can't imagine that I would have gotten more grief. My shoes, my pants, my shirt. I mean, literally every single aspect of my attire. I should have known it was a bad side, Brandt. I don't know how many times you've gotten your picture, maybe because you're a golfer, you get your picture taken by yourself. As my wife was taking that picture before we went in the game, I was thinking to myself, I don't remember the last time other than a school yearbook photo that I've had a picture taken of myself, right? Just me, not with my family, not with my kids, not with friends, just me standing by myself. I was like, this is maybe a bad decision by me to get my picture taken by myself. Now, girls, it'll happen to, your wife's good looking, my wife's good looking. Okay, I'll get a picture of you, I understand. But I was thinking to myself, nobody ever takes a picture of me by myself. I should have been more leery of that. If you're a dude, you're a dad in particular, you should never have a picture taken by yourself.
It's a very awkward feeling. I get it all the time on the golf course where people want to take just my picture, and I always invite them to get in the picture. So I'm like, it's a very awkward feeling to stand, especially when it's not your own, it's not your own picture.
Yeah,
to have to just take a picture of just you, and I'm like, man, this is so awkward. This feels so wrong in so many different ways.
Yeah, you don't know what to do, and also, why does somebody want a picture of just you? I understand that people want a picture with you.
I get it all the time. I don't get it. I'm more than happy to take pictures of anybody, and they want one of just me. It kind of creeps me out a little bit. Don't really know what to do with my hands or anything in the picture. I'm like, this is so awkward. This just feels so weird.
Outstanding stuff. So I've got money on you, not to put any pressure on you. I put money on you every tournament. And by the way, every time I've lost.
I owe you thousands of dollars right now.
Thousands of dollars. But you know what? At some point, I'm going to win big, and then it's all going to be good. So
exactly.
I've got money on you. No pressure, but I've got money on you. So when you win the U.S. Open, we'll have you back on to break down that performance on Monday. Deal?
Deal. Just make everybody. I made it okay. Navigation did work. We're good.
All right, you made it to the course. You didn't have to sprint there. Tell your caddy that I hate him for not standing up for my outfit. I looked incredible.
All right, yeah, sure you did. Keep telling yourself that.
That is Brent Snedeker. He has arrived. The navigation has gotten him to the golf course. U.S. Open starts tomorrow on FS1. And right now it's time for us to go to trending. Then my guy Jeff Schwartz chopping in on the other side. But first, let's find out what's trending now. Welcome back. What a great song. So the Fox Sports Radio studios brought to you by Geico. It's a feud going on right now, right? It's easy to save 15% or more on car insurance with Geico. Go to geico.com or call 800-947-AUTO. The only hard part, figuring out which way is easier. As well, with TrueCar, went to their offices in Santa Monica. They're fantastic, spectacular, unbelievable, looking out over the Pacific Ocean. You can find out what other people in your area paid for the same car you're looking for, and on average, save over $3,000 off MSRP. Whether you're looking for a new or used car, visit TrueCar to enjoy a more confident car buying experience. I said, guys, TrueCar. Man, the show's really good. They're like, we wouldn't know. We're not up early enough to listen. I said, well, you can listen to the podcast. Speaking of a guy who used to live in L.A., Jeff Schwartz. Jeff, we had to bump you today back a little bit because Brant Snedeker was calling in from the U.S. Open course. So it's a bad sign. He had to have the navigation on to get to the course. It's the middle of nowhere. So we bring in Jeff Schwartz now, and I was asking him, what did you think of my outfit for the Preds game?
So when I saw it, I just thought it was the most casual, basic white guy sporting event outfit. Polo, jeans, some tennis shoes. I mean, if you had New Balances, you would have really pulled it off. I don't know. It's the first time I've ever seen someone when I saw it, I thought to myself, why is he posing in a polo? I just didn't understand. I've never seen a grown man ever pose in a polo before. So
it's because it was a Friday Night Lights polo. It's a great television show. Show some respect.
But I'm like, you made sure the lighting was right. I mean, you really went out. You were like a teenage girl there. You just wanted to be known that you dressed semi-nice to go to that would be considered nice for me. So that nice to a hockey game. It's okay. You're proud of yourself. You're proud you're not wearing shorts and a t-shirt. I get it. I take photos of myself all the time wearing nice clothes. I understand, but you can't pretend that it wasn't just a staged photo, just trying to show everyone that you look good.
I would have never gotten that photo taken if I hadn't had my Friday Night Lights polo on. And I was just telling Brant Snedeker, and I'm telling you too, I can't remember the last time I got a picture taken by myself. Pictures maybe for TV where they're using it for like a headshot so they can be like, oh, here's Clay Travis, he does X for Fox. Like, that doesn't really count. Like, that's a work photo. I can't remember the last time prior to that I would have been in a photo by myself.
Yeah, I mean, I hate doing those, but I kind of have to, to brand myself. I have to kind of put out what I'm doing. When I do TV at night, I take a picture of myself. Plus, also, I can then keep track of what I'm wearing so I don't wear it twice pretty soon. But yeah, I just, even now, I still feel really weird when I take a selfie or have someone pose for a picture. It just doesn't seem normal to me. And the last time I probably did it was when, for football, when I'm in my uniform or something and taking, those pictures you take, kind of promo pictures before the season starts.
We were talking earlier in the show about how to make the NBA great again. And in particular, we were focused on the fact that it's pretty interesting data that the NBA set a 5-year low for overall viewership. Notwithstanding the fact that a lot of people watch the finals, super teams are good for the finals because everybody has a rooting interest. They care about LeBron. They care about the Cavs. They care about Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and the Warriors. And I'm imagining, I know you watch the NBA finals as well. But do you find yourself not caring about the NBA regular season as much as you have in the past because of that same reason, the super teams?
Yes, and because my team, the Lakers, aren't any good. We claim that we don't like super teams, but we do. We like Alabama football. We as much as people don't want to admit it, the Cowboys, when they're on TV, everyone watches. When the Patriots are on TV, everyone watches. In baseball, they don't really have super teams, but if the Yankees are good, Boston's good, everyone's going to watch. And so I don't mind having these great teams. I think that, to me, everything that was how bad the regular season was worth it to watch these two teams play. And yes,
4 of these games weren't terrible. Really, 4 of the games weren't terribly close, but they were great games. Like, watching these guys play was awesome. It's good basketball. It's exciting. It's fun. It was intense. And so I'm okay with the payoff being this. If you go to a system where you have one superstar a team, I don't think that's going to be very exciting.
What do you think? Like, the report that came out that the Golden State Warriors were not going to visit the White House. Then the team said, well, we haven't been officially invited yet, so we can't respond. Who knows what the end result's going to be? Maybe they just don't get an invite, and hopefully we don't have to spend a ton of time talking on this story. But you played in the league in the NFL for 8 or 9 years. Would you have gone to the White House regardless of who the president was, or would you have tried to make a statement about whether or not you agreed with the president when it came to visiting the White House?
All right. People follow me on Twitter. You know my views. I do not like the current president. It's really not as much politically. It's just I just can't stand the incompetence. But I was disappointed and a little upset actually yesterday when the first thing, the Warriors win a championship, and I don't think that this story is verified yet, but the Warriors win a championship, and then all of a sudden it's gone right to political, and the left is trying to use this moment, for their political gain instead of enjoying what they just did. This might be the greatest single-season team of all time, and we're instead talking about they're going to go visit the president, which is, it literally does nothing. It means nothing, right? It's just a celebration. And people were trying to argue with me that it's a big political stand. It's not. It doesn't do anything to move the needle left or right one direction. It actually might move people like me that are kind of in the middle to more to the right, because I just can't stand it all the time. We should honor what they did on the court, and we can worry about their political stand tomorrow or the day after. As far as would I go to the White House, I would, because I love history. I was my first major before I switched it. And I've never been to the White House. I think it would be a pleasure to go visit it. I can separate going to the White House, seeing the history, and also not enjoying the president. Like, I don't have to spend the whole time yucking up with Trump. I can enjoy the history of the White House. So I would go. Now, they've mostly been already, so I get why they wouldn't want to go again, but I think we make too much of a deal. Like, when the Penguins won the Cup 3 days ago, we didn't hear a tweet right away from the right saying, look, the Penguins are going to the White House, because it's not important.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. Can you come back with this final segment since we had Brant on? Okay, we'll bring back Jeff Shorts here for the final segment of Hour 2. I'm Clay Travis. You're listening to Outkick the Coverage. We'll dive in with him. Does he think the Lakers should draft Lonzo Ball? He's a big Lakers fan. And we'll talk drum, Colin Kaepernick. It's Outkick here on Fox Sports Radio. Well done there. Will Smith bringing us back. It's almost summertime. Drum. Feels like summertime. There we go. Drum. That's what I do. Make plays. Live from the Geico Fox Sports Radio studios. What does it mean when Geico says just 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance? It means you probably should have gone to geico.com 15 minutes ago. Our guy Jeff Shorts he joins us every single Wednesday. Got bumped back a little bit because we had Brant Snedeker calling in from the Erin Hills Golf Course there in Wisconsin. U.S. Open starts tomorrow on FS1. Jeff, I teased as we went to break, Lonzo Ball. Obviously, LeVar Ball now signing $60 baseball cards. This is real life. His dad has gotten a lot of attention. The Lakers worked him out. Different reports about how good he looked. Markelle Fultz is a massive minus 2,000 favorite to be the overall number 1 pick. You're a lifelong Lakers fan. Do you want the Lakers to take him number 2 overall? Yes, because I think taking him would bring other players to the Lakers. I think he's such a unique talent at distributing the ball that a guy like Paul George would want to come play for the Lakers. I've seen this floating around. It would make sense. 2018, LeBron, Paul George, Lonzo Ball, D'Angelo Russell formed their own little Lakers super team. Look, can they beat the Warriors? Who knows? But I think LeBron's going to end up in L.A. at some point. He has a house in L.A., obviously. That's been discussed. He got a production company in Los Angeles. He's been in movies, obviously. I could see him eventually becoming, kind of like a mentor. What Kobe was supposed to be for the Lakers, but never was because he wanted to shoot too much. So the Lakers, you grew up obviously in L.A. as a huge Laker fan. Has it really kind of sunk in for you yet that now you have both the Chargers and the Rams back in L.A.? And do you think that'll change like kind of the overall landscape of L.A. sports? USC kind of became the default pro team in L.A. for a long time without that NFL franchise. The Dodgers obviously have their fan base. The Lakers have theirs. Is that going to change the pecking order? Like, can you think about what it would be like if you were a kid in L.A. now and you had two NFL teams also to factor into your attention?
I think it's an interesting question because I think you could look at where I live in Charlotte, right? So the Panthers have been here, I believe, 20-plus years now. It was in 95 when they came in, right? Or 93.
Yeah.
So the 20-year-olds in Charlotte, 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds, they are Panther fans, right? Their parents are not, but they are. So will that happen in Los Angeles? Will the kids now, whose parents might be Rams fans, or even just young kids looking to find a team, will they become Rams or Chargers fans? I don't know. There's so much to do. And you mentioned USC. Winning is so important in Los Angeles. If USC, which they're good, they could win the Pac-12 this year, they might have a chance to go all the way. Who knows? If they are really good and they're in the playoffs and the Rams are in the playoffs, I think that more fans would go to USC right now than they would go to a Rams game. I think it's going to take a while to build that fan base. And this is something that's overlooked, but when the Chargers are the second team in Los Angeles, all the corporate money, the big money, has already gone to the Rams. My mom's law firm, they already bought their Rams tickets. They're not buying Charger tickets. And they lost out on this whole subsection of fans because they were the second one to the party. And so I think the Chargers are going to really struggle. There's not a lot of Charger fans in Los Angeles. And if you made the drive from San Diego to LA, for a game, it could be 2 hours, it could be 5-hour drive. I just don't see a lot of fans from San Diego making the trip up to LA to see a game.
Yeah, people who have never sat in that traffic, they're like, oh, it's only 90 miles difference between LA and San Diego. Yeah, good luck with that.
It could be. I've done it in an hour and 15 minutes in the middle of the night driving home. I've also done it in 5 hours. And just because it's Sunday does not matter.
Oh, yeah. I took my kids to Legoland down in, I guess it was Carlsbad, I think, right? It's beautiful. Legoland.
It's North San Diego, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really cool trip. And I was like, oh, my God. Like, I felt like we should, pack sleeping bags because you just never know. You might just have to go to sleep there on the 405. We're talking to Jeff Schwartz. He is an L.A. native. All right, I teased also Colin Kaepernick. We can't ever go a week without talking about Colin Kaepernick. The Seahawks pass on him. They come up with this weird excuse like, oh, he's too good to be a backup. Do you think that Colin Kaepernick will be on an NFL team this year, or do you think the ship is sailing and his career for at least this year is over?
I thought Seattle was his best chance, honestly. I know people have floated the Cowboys around. Makes a little bit of sense. But we had a guy on Sirius the other day, Cowboys.com writer, and he's like, there's no chance. That ship has sailed for Kaepernick in Dallas. If someone were to get hurt, maybe in training camp, but, it's funny. Everyone tries to put Cap in this, well, he's a pocket passer. He's really not. So I think that you're going to have trouble bringing him in if someone gets hurt and saying, hey, here's a playbook, Cap. Just go run what they've been running. You have to change the offense. And some teams have done that. Dallas changed the offense for Dak Prescott, but some coaches are not that flexible. So it's going to be tough to see him come in at camp if there's an injury somewhere. I just don't see the benefit in that. He can still play, I think. It's just a matter of where he goes. And I think he's a player that needed to be in a system in the spring or at least to start training camp. But the Seattle thing was so odd. I still don't understand why they came out and so positively praised Kaepernick. Maybe they didn't want backlash for not signing him. But I've never heard someone say a guy is too good for the roster. You don't ever hear any other free agent say, hey, he's just too good for us. That's a ridiculous response. NFL's always trying to get better. If a guy is better than someone else, they're going to sign that person. So I didn't quite get that. The only thing I could think of is that when he sat down with Pete Carroll, and look, it's hard to explain to people that haven't played. I'll try my best about.
We got to take a break here. We got a hard out at the top. I'll bring you back for 30 seconds to talk on the top if you can come back with us. I am Clay Travis. Jeff Schwartz making sense of why Colin Kaepernick was not signed. Up beginning of hour number 3 here on Fox Sports Radio. Welcome back. Hour 3, Fox Sports Radio studios, brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com for a free rate quote, as well as our friends at AutoZone. They want you to know that heat is the main cause of battery failure, so it's important to have a tough battery. Duralast batteries designed and tested to start in extreme temperatures up to 167 degrees. They're proven tough and sold only at AutoZone. Get in the zone, AutoZone. Breaking news here, and this is not good breaking news by any stretch of the imagination, but it will be a very big story. I just want to hit it for you guys, and there's actually a sports connection, and it's a strange one. And Jason Martin may know a little bit more detail about this, but I'm just pulling up the news as it's breaking on Twitter. In the state of Virginia, obviously lots of you listening in the state of Virginia, the Republican baseball practice, they have, basically, I'm assuming this is maybe softball. They have a softball league that Congress plays in. There was a shooter who showed up there and fired up to 50 shots. The House Majority Whip, Steve Scalise, and his aides, several people were shot at a baseball practice in Virginia. Again, this is Northern Virginia, early on Wednesday morning. This news just popping on Twitter, just breaking the fact that this has happened. And Jason Martin, you've got a little bit more info on this?
Yeah, I mean, this is a crazy story. Scalise was hit in the hip. 5 or more other staffers were hit. Over 50 shots were fired with a rifle. Mo Brooks, a senator from Alabama, ended up having to use his own belt as a tourniquet to stop Scalise's bleeding wound. Now, there are conflicting reports. Fox News has just reported that Scalise's security detail shot and killed the gunman, but there are also reports from other sources saying the suspect is in custody. So we don't know on that in terms of that, but the situation is over. But a crazy, crazy scene this morning in Alexandria with what's going on with Scalise getting hit. And Mo Brooks said he was not actually hit, but over 5 people, staffers, getting shot in the middle of this baseball practice. That's certainly not ideal news to wake up to on a Wednesday morning for a lot of folks that are getting up right around now and joining us.
Yeah, all over the country, people waking up. Again, this is I went to school in Washington, D.C., and I worked on the Hill for a little bit. So there are a lot of, people may not realize this, but there are a lot of like intramural sports leagues that involve the different congressional offices, Senate offices, and a lot of the people who work on the Hill, obviously young 20-somethings. In fact, I'm sure a ton of them are listening right now as they're driving in on Sirius XM Channel 83 or streaming on foxsportsradio.com. I know we have a big audience with Outkick there on the Hill. So this news out of Alexandria, if you're not familiar with the geography, Alexandria city right across the Potomac River there, where many people who make their living in Washington, D.C. live. Lots of fields there, obviously. And so far as we understand, this is a practice for part of those intramural leagues that was going on. Sort of a fun, laid-back thing for people who have a lot of stress in their lives and dealing with politics on a day-to-day basis. And there was a shooter who showed up there and shot multiple people. We don't know very many of those details. Again, just breaking this news story as we roll into hour 3 here on Outkick the coverage. Obviously, that's a major story in general. It will take over the news cycle, but there's also, interestingly, for purposes of Sports Talk Radio, a major kind of sports connection there, because these guys are, like a lot of you, despite whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, a big sports fan. And this is something that is very popular to do, beer softball leagues, kind of, for congressional staffers. And it was a big deal. If you worked on the Hill or you spent any time there, being a member of these teams was something that a lot of people talked about, and it doesn't surprise me that they would have an early morning practice for these teams to try to be better. And there's a lot of bragging rights always on the Hill over whose softball team had won, sometimes flag football, like a lot of different college-esque activities, because so many of the people who work in these offices are young 20-somethings just out of college. Politics in general tends to attract a lot of young, idealistic individuals on both the Republican and the Democratic side. So we'll keep you updated on that story as it continues to develop. But again, a shooting at a congressional baseball or softball. It says baseball, but I remember more softball discussion, but practice. And we'll let you know exactly what happened there. But that news just breaking as you are waking up across the country. In much less, infinitely less, far less significant news, we have been on this show discussing the end of the NBA season. And by the way, I'm just going to throw this out there. Anytime there's a breaking news story like this, we're on in all 50 states. We're on virtually in every different market all over the country. If you are there or you have witnessed something that happened with a breaking news story that we talk about, I always want to encourage you to call in and share with your fellow Outkick listening audience what happened. So I'm just tossing this out there. In the event that one of our listeners was there in the region of Alexandria, has information about what happened, might even have been playing in that game. You never know, and witnessed it as an eyewitness. I always want to let you know you're welcome to call. Program the phone number into your phone, 877-996-6369. We are a sports show, but we also hang out together every morning for 3 hours as you start your day, and we're going to cover the big stories as they may happen live on this show. So you always have an open line to us, 877-996-6369. If something happens, and it obviously is a major story in the morning, sports or otherwise, we always welcome your call to kind of reach out to the Outkick audience, speak across the nation to the 50 states, and tell us what you saw or what you witnessed. So I always want to reiterate that, 877-996-6369. But circling back around, so far in the show, we've covered a lot of ground. I'd always encourage you to go back and check out the podcast. We started off the show talking about the NBA. How do we make the NBA great again? I'll circle back around to that momentarily. In hour two, we had Brandt Snedeker, big-time golfer for the U.S. Open, calling in as he drove to the golf course there in Wisconsin to break down that, also to make fun of me for the outfit that I wore to the NHL last game of the season there, the Stanley Cup playoff between the Penguins and the Predators. We then had Jeff Shorts, who joins us every single Wednesday. We were talking as he had to go about the Colin Kaepernick situation, how strange it was what Pete Carroll had to talk about in terms of saying, we can't sign Colin Kaepernick because he's too good to be a backup. That was a strange story in general. But primarily so far today, we have been talking about the NBA. And in particular, we have been talking about by the way, a little bit more information. Jason Martin, you have a little bit more information about that shooting. I see you putting some information up here on the screen.
Yeah, I'm trying to get as much as I can right now. One of the listeners actually reached out to me just now, said there's a congressional softball game scheduled at Nationals Park tomorrow night. You'd have to imagine this probably affects the chances that gets played. Mo Brooks was on CNN just a little while ago, just a couple of minutes ago, actually. He said he heard Steve Scalise scream, "Behind third base, I see a rifle," right before the shots rung out. He says he estimates somewhere between 50 and 100 shots from this rifleman before security detail was able to take him down. So a frightening, frightening scene in Alexandria this morning, to be certain.
And again, maybe this is connected to the congressional softball game that is scheduled at Nationals Park tomorrow night. May have just been some – I mean, honestly, like a lot of times we focus on, the political differences that people have. And I've always said this. It's not just because I went to school in D.C. It's not just because I've worked in politics before I did this. There are very few times that I've met a Republican or a Democrat who is representing the country that I haven't liked, right, regardless of what your political views are. And these guys are very competitive. And I wouldn't be surprised at all. That's interesting information from a caller about the congressional softball game scheduled tomorrow at the Nats Park there, that they don't want to go out and embarrass themselves, right? I mean, you're busy, just like a lot of you, right? Just like a lot of you are running around busy all day. But if you're going to be playing in front of suddenly an audience, you don't want to be the guy who shows up at the softball game and strikes out in slow pitch softball or is unable to catch a fly ball. You might not have put a glove on for a long time. But a lot of times this is something that guys do, privately. I've heard a lot of politicians talk about how nervous they are when they have to come out and throw out the first pitch. And I've thrown out the first pitch at a couple of different minor league baseball games, and it is a little bit intimidating. And so a lot of guys, they don't want to have their moment. If you remember, the Cincinnati mayor had one of the worst first pitches of all time. They don't want to have their 50 Cent moment. They want to look like George W. Bush did when he threw out the first pitch after 9/11. They want to look like you have some clue what's going on in sports. And so they'll get off to the side and actually try and practice their first pitch so that they don't end up an internet meme or end up getting ridiculed on social media. And I would guarantee you that there might very well be a connection here for this practice, and it is a mess. It is a mess to have that happen. Obviously, surrounding everything that is just so, I would say, just there's so much high temper right now. And even in sports, it filters in. This is what we were talking about at the end of the show yesterday. People can't just escape anymore. You can't hope that sports is going to be an escape from politics. You see these poor guys, they're out in Alexandria doing the congressional softball practice, and some lunatic shows up and fires 50 or 100 shots at them. We don't know any of the motivation, but everybody's just so angry all the time now. And we were just talking to Jeff Shorts the last segment, and it's a little bit, regardless of how you vote or which side of the political aisle you're on, it's a little bit crazy, right? That we can't have nice things, it seems like now. Like the Warriors are one of the greatest teams of all time. And yesterday I come on the show and we're talking about like how good of a team are the Warriors? What do we think about next year? Is this the greatest NBA team of all time? And almost immediately news comes on social media, they're not going to go to the White House because they don't like Donald Trump. And Jeff Shorts was just talking about with us this last hour. It's like, really? We can't sit around and enjoy the NBA game that we just saw last night. We can't appreciate and enjoy Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green and Kevin Durant and that team that they just put together and the struggle against them that LeBron James put up, even for like 12 hours before immediately politics sweeps in and they're like, they're not going to go to the White House because they don't like Donald Trump. Like, really? This is, people talk to me all the time about politics and sports. And look, I worked in politics. I get it. And you can't make sports not connect to the real world. But the analogy I've always used is for many people, and I think it's a lot of you listening right now in all 50 states across the country as you start your day, you put on this radio show, you kick back when you get home from work, and you put on sports to escape the serious things in your life. Right? I mean, that's what sports is. Sports is, you heard this description a long time when you write about sports. Somebody coined it, and I can't even remember who it was, but they said sports is the toy chest of life. It's where you go to spend time that isn't that serious, right? And so I think in a large sense, the way that people respond to Colin Kaepernick, the way they respond to a story like the Warriors are not going to go to the White House, is they just kind of sigh, right? Internally, you're just like, really? Like, I can't just hang out and avoid the political process, even in sports now. Like, this is my refuge from serious things in life. And the analogy that I like to draw is I have 3 kids, right? 9-year-old, 6-year-old, and a 2-year-old. If I get them to eat their food, and you guys have been there if you're a parent, getting your kids to eat healthy food is like pulling out your own damn teeth, right? Like every single day. At some point in time, I literally think my wife is going to strangle one of my kids to death because he won't eat healthy. And I'm always the guy like, look, they're probably not going to die, all right? Like, they're probably going to be fine. And she's like, well, they're not eating healthy. I'm like, whatever. Like, nobody eats healthy. Eventually, these kids are going to be fine. They're going to want girls to like them. They'll lose weight, whatever. Like, I don't worry about what the kids do, right? My wife is much more of a stickler about this stuff. And so in order to get a treat, what do? We say, if you finish this food, this may not be great parenting, but certainly it's something that I think just about every parent does. We say, if you finish this food, you get a treat. You get ice cream. You get I don't know, like a smoothie, like something that they want at the end of the meal. And I've thought for a long time that what's happening in sports now is sports is, in addition to being the toy chest of life, the dessert of life, right? Sports is what you get to. You have to do a lot of things to get to sports. Okay, I got to take care of my family. I got to make sure that mom is that mom's doing well. I got to make sure that grandma's okay. I got to make sure that my aunt's okay. Like all these different things. Got to make sure that I did the work at home for the job. Got to make sure that I'm producing. Got to make sure the kids are doing their homework. All these things, and then everybody just gets to sit back at the end of the day and they get to watch a game. And that's the kind of like the sigh of the day. It's the dessert of life. It's the toy chest of life. Imagine what happens if you have kids, if at the end of that meal, when you've said, okay, you get dessert, and they're like, okay, what's dessert today? Is it birthday cake ice cream? Is it going to be that Oreo yogurt? If I said, okay, dessert is broccoli, then your kids revolt. And I think we're seeing that a little bit in sports. I really do, in terms of people not watching them as much, in terms of people just tuning out. Because politics has become so embedded in sports now that it's like you can't even enjoy the Golden State Warriors and talk, even on this show, for a full show before it's like, oh, well, they're not going to go see Donald Trump, and then it's immediately politicized. And this obviously is much more serious, and if you're wondering why we got here, it's because there's been a shooting in Alexandria, Virginia, at a congressional softball practice. 50 to 100 shots fired at congressional members and their staffers. We're going to update you with exactly what happened there as best we can tell. Prayers to all involved, obviously. This is Outkick the coverage. We'll tell you what happened in Alexandria to the best of our knowledge on this breaking news story here on Fox Sports Radio. Live from the Geico Fox Sports Radio studios. Great news. Quick way you could save money. Switch to Geico. Go to geico.com, and in 15 minutes you could save 15% or more on car insurance. If you're waking up across the country, this is a unfortunate and ugly incident that has happened in Alexandria, Virginia. News is just breaking. There is a yearly congressional softball game. It's in a couple of days at the Nats Park. Evidently, there was a gathering of congressional members and staffers for a softball practice of some sort to help get people ready, I am guessing, for that game at the Nats facility. We'll still hear a little bit more about that. The congressional softball leagues are insanely popular. I went to college in Washington, D.C., worked on the Hill. People love talking about these intramural leagues. Like I said, there's lots of 20-somethings that play. Well, there's been a shooting. And we don't know who the individual is yet, but reports are that he fired a lot of shots, between 50 and 100 reportedly, although that sounds like a ton of shots, maybe also some shots being fired back at him. There are multiple congressmen potentially who've been shot and also staffers. We don't know exactly who these individuals are. Jason Martin, you're following this story closely. What do we know? This happened in Alexandria, Virginia. If you're just waking up in the morning, Alexandria, Virginia is the city in Virginia right across the Potomac River in northern Virginia from, obviously, Washington, D.C. It's a place where many people who work on the Hill would live, and obviously where they were having a congressional practice of some sort, baseball or softball. I'm guessing it's softball, although early reports have been baseball. Jason, what do we know?
The facts are around 7:15 Eastern Time this morning during the Republican practice for the annual congressional baseball game, which takes place tomorrow at Nationals Park in D.C., a rifleman opened fire on the legislators. Over 50 shots rang out. Some are saying up to 100. I saw Rand Paul say somewhere around 75, and he said all of them would have died had it not been for the U.S. Capitol Police that took him down after around 10 minutes. They were equipped with pistols. According to the reports I've seen, he had a rifle, which enabled him to do a lot of damage beforehand from a distance. He eventually moved closer to home plate. That's when they were able to take him down. Steve Scalise is the majority whip from Louisiana. He was shot in the hip. Mo Brooks, another legislator, was watching from above, saw him scream out, "I see a rifle," behind the third base line. Scalise was around second base at the time he was shot. After he was hit, he dragged himself to the outfield with a blood trail of about 20 feet behind him, just trying to stay alive. Mo Brooks eventually went down and used his belt as a tourniquet to stop the bleeding from the wound. They're saying Scalise is going to survive. At least 4 other staffers or officials were hit during the situation, and there are still conflicting reports as to whether or not he's in custody or whether or not the shooter is actually dead. He's reportedly a middle-aged white man.
We don't know his motivations. We don't know anything yet so far. But again, I think it's just emblematic of kind of the state of the country right now, that you got guys out there, whether they're Republicans or they're Democrats, trying to make sure that they don't look bad in the congressional softball game. They're busy. They probably haven't worn their gloves very much. They're trying to get away and just have a little bit of fun in Alexandria, hanging out with each other. And then this guy just shows up and starts shooting. And, again, we don't know the motivation. We don't know anything about the guy. What's that?
Yeah, a couple of other things I just saw. Mo Brooks has said the suspect was shot by a Capitol Police officer who had been shot himself. So somehow he shot him afterwards, said that the gunman was hiding behind the dugout. That's how he had protection during the shooting, which enabled this thing to extend out for 10 minutes. The situation, of course, is over. But a lot of people saying that the Capitol Police saved a ton of lives and we'll hear a lot of those stories, I'm sure, today. But just a horrific scene this morning, especially when you consider that these guys are out there trying to escape, trying to do something that's going to be entertaining tomorrow night at Nationals Park, and this is, how their lives ended up this morning. It's very, very sad.
Yeah, sports and politics colliding in a ugly incident. Again, Alexandria, Virginia. I'm going to continue to put out the phone number here because I feel like there's a decent chance that somebody who's listening to us right now may well have been there or knows some other additional details about this incident. Again, Alexandria, Virginia. If you're just waking up across the country, shooting involving congressmen trying to get ready for the congressional softball game. I don't know if it can speak to any more of the ridiculous politicization in this country. We'll see what the motivations were behind this clearly crazy and insane individual who decided to open fire on the congressman here in Alexandria, Virginia. Alexandria, a city just across the river there. If you've been to Washington, D.C., I went to college there, spent a lot of time in the city. It's the city right across the Potomac River, and congressional softball leagues can be a big deal, and obviously this probably a practice to deal with the fact that the congressional softball game is taking place in the National Stadium. I believe you said tomorrow, Jason Martin, or it was. I imagine.
Yes, it's tomorrow. Yeah, I imagine
we'll see whether
they may
it still
not do
goes
it
on.
now.
Yeah, we'll see whether it continues. But this is something that's been going on since I saw you talking about this, Jason, like since 1909.
Yes, the game's been played. The congressional baseball game, the annual game, has been played since 1909, and just looking at how hard they were probably out there practicing, Democrats and Republicans, their all-time record, identical, 39, 39, and 1. So tomorrow would break the tie. So I'll bet this was quite the practice this morning.
Lots
that
of
they
trash
were out
talk,
there for.
39, 39, and 1. And I know, again, that we live in an incredibly politicized time. But having worked on the Hill and having spent a lot of time in D.C., I can tell you that this is one of those things that, sports is what typically unites us, right? It takes us away from who we voted for. It takes us out of our tribal, racial, ethnic, religious groups and kind of gives us some common language to speak, whether you are a black neurosurgeon or an Asian janitor or a white teacher or a Hispanic, like a construction worker. Whatever you are, sports can be the fabric that connects us, right, across all 50 states, across the entire scope of the nation. And this is something that's kind of an escape. It is something that takes the politics out of it. You can sit around and trash talk about who's going to win the congressional softball game. And obviously, this is a very ugly incident that happened this morning. Breaking news. We're still covering it. We'll go to what's trending now, and we'll continue to update you on the shooting again. If you're just waking up across the country, shooting at a congressional softball practice in Alexandria, Virginia. At least one congressman hit and severely wounded. Lots of shots fired. We don't know the motivation of the individual. We don't know how many people were hit or whether anybody has been killed. But obviously, this is going to be the number one story of the day, and it implicates literally sports and politics in a way that all of us would hope would never end up happening. But first, let's find out what's trending now. Welcome back. Fox Sports Radio Studios brought to you by Geico. It's easy to save 15% or more on car insurance with Geico. Go to geico.com or call 800-947-AUTO. The only hard part, figuring out which way is easier, as well with TrueCar. You can find out what other people in your area paid for the same car you're looking for, and on average, save over $3,000 off MSRP. Whether you're looking for a new or used car, visit TrueCar to enjoy a more confident car buying experience. And we are talking about an unfortunate news incident that is breaking news as you're waking up across the country, a shooting at a Republican congressional softball practice. This is in Alexandria, Virginia. An individual showed up and fired, according to this report, between 50 and 100 shots. At least one congressman shot. That individual is Scalise from Louisiana. Is that correct, Jason Martin?
Yeah, he's the majority whip for Louisiana, yes, from Louisiana.
And also several congressional staffers hit, and the Alexandria police has tweeted an update. Alexandria City directly across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C., if you are not familiar with the geography. If you're wondering why are they practicing softball, well, first of all, softball and intramural sports in general, very popular on the Hill. It's a way that people can escape from the serious, complex and oftentimes stressful political scene. that these intramural kind of beer leagues, softball leagues can be really popular, different offices competing against each other. But this practice seems to be connected to the annual congressional softball game, which is taking place tomorrow at the Nats Stadium. Early morning practice set to make sure that some of the congressmen who might not have worn a glove for a while, might not have jogged the bases, are out there not looking like total ridiculous nincompoops when they play the sport. So they want to look a little bit better than you might anticipate. So this practice out there just to help them get back in the flow of being softball players, baseball players once more. And as Jason Martin said, this thing started back in 1909, and right now the all-time record between Republicans and Democrats tied at 38-1.
39-39-1.
39-39-1. Okay, what else do we know, Jason Martin?
There's not too much new except that NBC is reporting stable condition for all victims, which certainly we hope is true. There's another report out there from the Hill saying that at least one of the staffers was hit in the chest, but there's still nothing past that. And it appears, yes, the guy's in custody, so the earlier report of him being killed was not true. But I do believe he was shot before he was taken into custody, so there's still a whole lot of things coming out about this. Scalise is the biggest name, certainly, and he's the one that the stories are coming out about. But everybody that was there, Rand Paul, actually, I saw him on TV just a little while ago say this would have been an absolute massacre had it not been for the Capitol Police. Also, it took local law enforcement between 2 and 5 minutes to get there once they learned of the situation. They were dealing with other shootings that had taken place in Alexandria. There was a multiple shooting situation earlier in the morning. And the one thing that you might want to know about the congressional baseball game is that these guys got up at like 5 a.m. to go practice to raise money for charity tomorrow night, and somebody showed up and shot people. Like, that's awful.
The additional report, and again, this is going to get, as these details continue to come out, Representative Ron DeSantis told Fox News the shooter asked before he started firing if the people practicing were Republicans or Democrats.
And he wasn't alone. Representative Jeff Duncan, according to CNN, is going to be giving a statement to police saying that he had a conversation with the shooter. He left practice early this morning, and the man was in running clothes and reportedly asked, quote, "Are those Republicans or Democrats out there practicing?"
Just again, I mean, I don't know how you lower the level of anger that seems to be out there right now. This is another example of just like how you can't escape, even in sports. And even for guys and girls who are otherwise Congress people, just trying to do something not at all political, not at all designed to change anything in the world except for have a little bit of fun for 2 or 3 hours and hopefully not make a fool of yourself if you haven't played baseball for a while. So let's go have a practice so we can try to win this game as Republicans or so we can try to win this game as Democrats. And reports that a guy showed up with a gun and said, "Are those Republicans or Democrats?" And then when he was told they were Republicans, opened fire on him and tried to kill people. It's just, I mean, it is. I wish I had the magic wand. I wish I had the magic solution to somehow dial back the just the anger and discord that is out there, that even in the world of sports, we're not able to escape situations like this. Again, details continue to come out. We're following it. If you're waking up, breaking news, crazy dude, all too often it happens, shows up at Republican baseball practice as they get ready for a game. It's going to be in the Nats Stadium. Republicans play the Democrats in a baseball game every year. It's been happening since 1909. They're tied all time, 39-39-1. Bragging rights on the line, and the Republicans are having an early morning practice in Alexandria, Virginia. And what happens? A shooting, severe injuries, including the House Majority Whip being shot. The suspect is in custody. We'll learn more certainly as the day progresses, but this is all breaking news as we are on the air with you guys. this morning, all 50 states, Sirius XM Channel 83. 877-996-6369. If you happen to be in the area, you happen to witness anything, you want to share your story. I am Clay Travis. This is Outkick the Coverage on Fox Sports Radio. Live from the Geico Fox Sports Radio studios, tracking this awful story involving congressmen practicing for the annual baseball game between the Republicans and Democrats. If you're just waking up, shooter opens fire, hits multiple individual congressmen. No reports of deaths so far, but lots of injuries, people being airlifted to hospitals. Suspect is in custody. We have a caller, Anthony in Alexandria. The shooting happened in Alexandria, Virginia, right across the river there in outside of D.C. If you're not familiar with the geography, Alexandria, the first town when you cross the river, the Potomac, from Washington, D.C. Anthony, you live right by where the shooting happened?
Yeah. Can you hear me there, Clay?
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah, my apartment complex is actually right next to the baseball field, basically, maybe a quarter mile down, and I've never seen so many cops in my life. Honestly, I'm pretty shook right now. It's pretty crazy. I couldn't even get out of my street. Like, I had to pull out of a road to get onto the Jefferson Davis Highway, which is the main thoroughfare there, and I couldn't even get out because there were so many cops and ambulances driving by. Never seen anything like that in my entire life.
Did you hear shooting this morning? Were you aware that was going on? I mean, you're not that far away, so I'm just curious if you could hear the gunshots.
Honestly, I wish I could say, but no, I'm not going to. I really couldn't hear anything. I couldn't hear anything. I basically pulled out as I saw one or two cops, and then it was all of a sudden it was like 50. And then there was a bunch of ambulances behind it, and it was like, oh, my God. And I pulled over to get gas right after, kind of confused, and then I was listening to your show, and I talked to somebody, and the Alexandria Public Schools went on lockdown, so I guess it was a parent of a student who was freaking out to me. It seemed like everyone was, being concerned citizens trying to figure out what was going on.
Anthony, appreciate the call, my man. Thanks for listening to the show and keeping us updated from your perspective on what happened there.
Absolutely. Have a good one. Love the show. Bye-bye.
Appreciate that. Again, I toss out the number because there's a lot of people who listen all over the country. Odds are somebody who listens to Outkick is going to be by a story anywhere in the country. And so, obviously, this is a sports show. And look, I mean, this is just, I think, kind of emblematic of what's going on in the country in general. You want to use sports as a way to get away from the seriousness of life. And these Republicans could just as easily been Democrats out early in the morning trying to make sure that they're ready for the annual congressional baseball game between Republicans and Democrats. There are reports that this guy, according to multiple congressmen who have given their versions of what happened, that this guy was in the parking lot, and before he opened fire, he asked if they were Democrats or Republicans out practicing baseball, and then he started to shoot when he found out that they were Republicans. Now, it could have gone the other way, too. I'm not trying to say that one side is particularly more at fault than the other, but I think this is emblematic of the degree to which the country has lost its mind, right? I mean, the baseball, sort of one of the many sports, along with basketball and soccer and football and hockey and everything else. Sports are, to me, and they always have been, the fabric that unite our country. Because regardless of what educational level you have, regardless of what race you are, regardless of what ethnicity you are, religion you are, all these different things, they disappear in sports, right? They disappear on the field if you're competing, and they disappear certainly if you are able to talk about them. I've always said this. The thing that I love about sports is it unites the neurosurgeon and the janitor. Everybody, the guy who's the highest powered person at the hospital and the guy who is literally on the lowest rung in the hospital, if they are in the elevator together, they can talk about sports on an equal footing. And your opinion is just as valid as my opinion, regardless of what your background is. And it is really kind of, to me, the connective tissue that unites American society in many respects. Certainly for men and for an awful large majority of women as well, it is something that brings us all together in a positive way. And I think this is an interesting metaphor here because you have guys who argue all day in the House of Representatives, politicians pushing for their side of the aisle that they believe is correct, whether you're a Republican or you're a Democrat. And what they're trying to do is put down that politicization for one night and go play a baseball game. baseball game that's been happening since 1909. It's tied up 39-39-1. And these congressmen are getting up early in the morning, and they're going to this field in Alexandria, Virginia, right across the Potomac River from the United States Capitol, from where they work all day trying to, in their mind, make the world a better place, right? And they try to get this little bit of respite, this little bit of escape, and what happens? A crazy dude with a gun shows up and opens fire during the freaking baseball practice. If that isn't a sign or a metaphor or perfectly emblematic evidence of where we are as a country right now, I don't know what is, honestly. And I'm not speaking at this morning as this story is breaking from the perspective of a Democrat or a Republican or anybody else, just an American who likes sports. I think everybody should have pause here for a moment and ask, how do we get here? How do we get to the point where a guy in a parking lot says, are those Republicans or Democrats, and walks out with a gun and opens fire on them when he finds out they're Republicans while they're practicing baseball? This could have easily happened in any country, any part of the country, any state, any city. This morning it happened to happen in Alexandria. People trying to escape the serious things in their life for just a little while and play baseball. And this happens. I really do. It's hard not to see this as a metaphor for where the country is right now. And I know there's always been crazy people, and I know it's always impossible to stop crazy people from doing crazy things. But this, to me, is just an awful story that should. Look, nobody probably listening to us right now is ever going to do this, right? You're never driving around thinking, maybe I should get a gun out and go shoot at people who have different political opinions that I do while they're trying to play a sport. But in your own life, just an idea. Try to make things a little bit better today. Just think to yourself, what is going on that this is happening? That you can't escape politics right now and just go play baseball without somebody being angry about things. Why are people so mad? And if your anger in any way is helping to fuel this anger, just think about that. In general, don't always get on the soapbox, but America has never been in better shape, right? As angry as you might be, as disappointed as you might be about who your elected representatives are from president on down, the country's never been wealthier. In general, the country has never been safer. In general, TV's never been better. Sports have probably never been more entertaining. Look at the sports that we have had in recent history here. Unbelievable Super Bowl. Incredible team in the NBA Finals, the Golden State Warriors going 16-1. Phenomenal Clemson win over Alabama. The Tigers just visited the White House this week. Unbelievable 7-game World Series. The Cubs finally won. Think of all the amazing things that have happened in sports. Phenomenal NCAA tournament final. Think of all UNC wins late. Think of all the incredible things we've seen in the world of sports. Think about how great the country is right now from all pretty much statistical measures. And let me ask you this question as we finish the show today. Why are you so mad? Why are people so mad in this country? In the history of the world, very few people have had it this good. You may not like your opponents if you're a Republican. You may not like your opponents if you're a Democrat. But in general, really, if you're a sports fan, there should never have been a time where you've been more happy. Why are you so angry? I'm trying to make the world a better place a little bit. Hopefully, this has done it. Don't be an ass today on Fox Sports Radio.